Most hardcore. Some of them talk, but lacking in character. How can I relax when it's theft of innocence? The harmless are broken. Oh, what tragedy to meet death with the lost word unspoken. Hide it behind the foundations. Charity constructed house of euthanasia. Architects of house of cards remain hidden behind one noble cause. Extravagant facade masquerading as God. I don't buy it at all. I like the real thing raw. I tell the whole veil off. The lights on or off. I get mine either way. The stellar man in effect. I'll leave you free and breathless like true psychedelic acceptance. Worldview becomes transcendent. This midnight smoke is so high octane, paralyzing the presence. Hello everyone and welcome to This Week in Tyranny. My name is Kenneth Rogers. I am your host. Welcome to the most hardcore news show on earth. Today is Friday, September 1st, 2023. This is episode 39, and this episode will be about censorship. It'll be about freedom of speech, and it might be a tense one, so let's jump right into it. It's about the European Union. This is going on in Europe, not the United States, but most of my audience is from the United States. Trust me, you guys don't want to miss this episode because it applies every bit. So what's happened in the European Union now? It's already passed. It's been implemented this week. It's called the Digital Services Act. And basically, this is a set of regulations which is going to be binding in the entire European Union and all of Europe. And it's regarding online content, everything that has to do with information being online. And I do mean everything, and I'll get into that. So it's going to be about freedom of speech, right? It's going to be about censorship, clearly, okay? So quick introduction. Why is freedom of speech so important? Why is this talked about so much? What's the big deal with freedom of speech? It may sound dumb to even talk about this, but let's start with the beginning, right? Well, unfortunately, the term freedom of speech has lost a lot of its value and its respect that it should have. It's been thrown around so much. Many people, when they hear freedom of speech, it doesn't mean a lot to them, and the reason is because the things most people speak about is total garbage and trash. Even the people on our side, and that's the truth. This phrase is really thrown around, when you're talking about freedom of speech and you're using that freedom to talk about just the lowest of the low. Well, that takes down the societal meaning in the collective subconscious, in the collective consciousness. That term loses a lot of its mystique and meaning, right? Because speech can be beautiful, and it is, right? But look, I can lay out everything going on in the world right now, and it wouldn't mean anything if it was just a bunch of dead words, right? If it's just words on a screen and I just read the script to you, it wouldn't mean anything, right? Even though it could be a beautiful thing, speech, right? But it's the freedom of expression that is a right to be defended relentlessly. That's the one we should be ready to fight over, and it's a lot more meaningful than freedom of speech. We're talking about freedom of expression, and I think that's the phrase we should use when we're standing up for the natural right to freely exchange information. That's the actual right. It's a natural right. It's not given by any human beings. We have a natural inborn right to exchange information freely with each other, right? And expression is what I do here every week. And it's not just speech. That's why I do this. That's why I dress like this. That's why I talk like this, because I put my heart and soul into this every week so that you could see this and you could see that I'm for real. I'm a real person, right? The ideas I present here are real and true. It's like actual expression here. I'm actually showing you who I am. It's not just content for money or to get a following or anything like that, right? This is true expression, and it's deeply missing in this world. So this week in Tyranny, we have something that is coming to kill the freedom of expression in Europe, much more so than it has already, because freedom of expression has been killed in Europe. But I don't want to be too hard on the Europeans, because you guys have been getting killed, and I don't mean you guys, I mean us, because I'm Polish. I'm 100% Polish. I was born in Poland, right? So We, not they, not you guys, we've had our freedom of expression killed for thousands and thousands of years of centralized religion, government, rulership, this bullshit idea of just going to church every Sunday, and you're surrounded by people that will stab you in the back. They're talking about morality, talking about confession. They don't know the first thing about anything spiritual. That's Europe, right? That's Europe, and they also don't have we don't have a gun culture, right? Nobody has ever stood up and defended themselves and had a successful rebellion, like the Haitian rebellion, the first and only successful slave rebellion, and the rebellion that was the American Revolution that created this country, and to a large degree created the limited amount of freedom and the European way of life that we call Western. It was actually created by the free entrepreneurial and pioneering spirit of the original American revolutionaries, right? So that's freedom of expression. The big deal about this, though, the Digital Services Act, is they're expanding censorship and content moderation to every area of the information space. So this is new. That's why I wanted to talk about this, because this is very new. We haven't had this yet. So what I mean by that, I'm going to go through, I'll attach the picture, I'll link to this, to what law this is, I'll read through it. But I'm just going to describe it real quick. What do I mean by every area? So right now, the things that are really moderated heavily is like your main information providers, like YouTube, and that's who it is. It's YouTube. The news is already controlled, so I'm not talking about the news. I'm not talking about Apple News. I'm talking about YouTube. I'm talking about Google, the things you get through your search engines, right? So that's already been included, and with their fact checkers, with their censorship, they're already moderating that. Platforms like Twitter, social media. Those are your main platforms. But now they're also expanding this to be online platforms, so different ones, smaller ones, but also hosting services. Hosting services like the kind that I use when I have my own website. So like you'll have your own website, but the service that allows you to have that website displayed, they are not now going to have these rules and this censorship put on them, and they're going to be held responsible, and therefore they will be the ones to censor you on your own website. That's why this is new, and that's why this is important. And this is actually expanding even further to intermediary services. So things like even your internet provider, like AT&T, like Comcast, they will now have the liability on them, the burden on them, to make sure that they're not allowing you to post anything that does not agree with the laws, right? And the regulatory commission that is created now along with this law, so-called law, right? So that's why this is important. The reach is ginormous. It's everything. So I'm going to now go through it. I'm going to read, and this is all from the website. This is all from the actual website, where they talk about this law and talk about the infrastructure and the new regulations and how they're going to be implemented, right? So I'm getting this directly from the source that is them, and they themselves have presented it in this way, and I'm going to read through it. I think I did an episode a few weeks back. I thought it was one of my most successful ones, where I just read an article, and I read a speech. I think it was the WHO, the head of the WHO, and I want to do that again so you guys can see how this looks like in the wild when you encounter this, how you can just analyze the source material, and the tyranny is pretty black and white and easy to see. So let me begin here. They start with the intermediary services, right? So intermediary services offering network infrastructure, meaning internet access providers and domain name registrars, including also, so before I go on, they just defined it. So it's internet access providers, the people who actually give you the internet. They are going to be charged with complying with this law, which means censoring you. And also domain name registrars. So the people that give you the name for your website, you have to buy that. It's like the naming rights, where you have your URL, like mine is truthandlaw.com. Well, I had to buy that name from a domain name registrar, and then I register my website, right? So even they So it will be regulated to the point where you will not be able to buy a website. To what degree they could even do this, I don't know, but they're trying to. So I'm going to talk about it. And that includes now your hosting services, which means cloud and web hosting services. So like I mentioned, something like Weebly or one of these, or one of the, WordPress, these kind of websites that let you create your own website and put it on there and host it. And then also cloud services like iCloud. Do you understand that this means that if you have a picture of something, or you have a meme that has something that's politically inflammatory, according to them, to this arbitrary commission that is going to now be in charge of interpreting this law, if you have that, you may actually be blocked from uploading it to something like a cloud service, like Google Docs or iCloud. That's what's going on. And also including, now we go into the online platforms. Online platforms bringing together sellers and consumers, such as online marketplaces, app stores, collaborative economy platforms, and social media platforms. So they're talking about Amazon, they're talking about the App Store, they're talking about when somebody makes a documentary about, I don't know, the police state or medical tyranny, they're not going to be able to carry it because it's going to be flagged in the European Union according to this law, in accordance with this law. And then something like Amazon, they will not be able to carry it and you will not get it, right? And also expanding to the biggest circle, which is very large online platforms. Very large online platforms pose particular risk for the dissemination of illegal content and societal harms. Specific rules are foreseen for platforms reaching more than 10% of the 450 million consumers in Europe. So they're talking about Facebook, they're talking about YouTube, they're talking about those big platforms. They say they pose particular risks for dissemination of illegal content. So they're going to determine what's illegal. But it's going to go much further than illegal. They're also talking about societal harms. So what could that be? That could be anything. That could be saying if you don't want to wear a mask, you're doing societal harm. They could say that if you don't agree with a certain type of new pseudoscientific gender education curriculum, if you don't agree with that, you're causing societal harm. If you're telling people, hey, you're garbage and trash if you support the tyrannical police and military, you're doing societal harm. They could say that, right? That's the point. They say the Digital Services Act significantly improves the mechanisms for the removal of illegal content for the effective protection of users' fundamental rights online, including the freedom of speech. It also creates a stronger public oversight of online platforms, in particular for platforms that reach more than 10% of the EU's population. So they threw that in there. I think they threw it in just to irritate people like me. That they're saying that this law will increase freedom of speech, right? This is just a joke. It's a joke, and also it's a good strategy, because by using the phrase, it makes people think that they're taking care of it, and this isn't an attack on freedom of speech just because they use the term freedom of speech, right? But what's a lot more meaningful is the statement that comes right after that, is that they said it creates a stronger public oversight of online platforms. What's public oversight? It's basically mob rule. It's the entire pool of internet users engaging in oversight of online platforms. So they're going to decide, everybody's going to decide, is this good speech? Is this fine? That's what they're talking about with public oversight. They're talking about reporting. They're talking about an environment where everybody is a censor and everybody is empowered to flag something for being unsafe or against or proliferating societal harms, right? That's what that's all about. So I'm going to go through some bullet points that they presented on this website, the European Commission and the European Union. They presented this as like bullet points of the things that this will accomplish. So these are supposed to be good things, and I'm going to read through them and I'm going to explain how they're totally not good things, very simply. Number 1, measures to counter illegal goods, services, or content online. such as a mechanism for users to flag such content and for platforms to cooperate with trusted flaggers. So they're going to have trusted flaggers, which are going to become a censorship force. That's what that means. They're going to be third party, just like those fact checkers are just third party people. They may not be on some type of government payroll, but you know what they are. They're not flagging actual information that's incorrect. They're going to flag information that goes against the predominant narrative that's dominating in the public space. That's what it's going to be. These trusted flaggers are just going to be a new censorship force. You know that's what's going to happen. I mean, it's happened again and again and again throughout history, right? Europeans should know. We should know enough about censorship and the history of having a force, having a censorship force or a political party to take command and censor people's private correspondence. Have we not had Nazi Germany and the communist occupations not had 100 years of basically that bullshit going on in the whole continent? But I don't know why Europeans have such a short memory, and that spreads out to the people I talk to and work with here. I don't know what's wrong with the Polish community here. Shouldn't we remember? Why do we think because it's red, white, and blue now that it's not going to become tyrannical? You think the next Hitler isn't going to come from the White House? Why not? It's happened again and again. So they want to implement mechanisms for users to flag such content, and that will be the big deal here. They want users to flag the content. They don't want it to come from a centralized agency or federation or service, right? It has to come from the people, because then, even though the same thing gets accomplished, the same end goal is accomplished, but now the people can actually be their own censors, and this is a lot more effective because you cannot put the blame on anybody for doing that. You cannot cut the head off of a king that everyone can see is making the decrees. He needs to be silenced. He needs to be silenced. Well, there's no one person doing that now. Under this new age censorship, everybody is a censor of everybody. And this is a stated goal of international socialism known as communism. This is a stated goal, clear and outright. Next point. New obligations on traceability of business users. So in online marketplaces, to help identify sellers of illegal goods, or reasonable efforts by online marketplaces to randomly check whether products or services have been identified as being illegal in any official database. So this is targeting business users like sellers, merchants, right? They want to identify sellers of illegal goods, and they also want that to be in an official database. So they're not really going to talk about just like the Silk Road and selling drugs online. This is going to be used to target especially natural health, because anyone who has a new supplement, or they're going to be selling vitamin C or iodine, which I take, right? Say somebody like Dr. Edward Group, he's selling all these products that are natural and they're potent, and they can help you defend yourself, protect yourself from developing any diseases. But of course, because the medical space, and not even the medical space, health in the Western world is dominated by government regulatory agencies. So now if an organization like the FDA, or the European equivalent of the FDA, or the World Health Organization, if they don't approve that as a medicine, that's illegal to them, even though you're just being sold vitamin C and just natural things that you could extract from the earth if your earth wasn't sprayed and poisoned and geoengineered. So someone like that is going to be flagged once. They flag him once. They're saying, oh, you sold something that wasn't approved and you claimed that this was going to help or prevent a disease. They could claim that, whether it's true or not. They can do that, and they have done that. And now, because he is flagged in some type of new official database that will be created, now these platforms, these online marketplaces like Amazon or anything, they won't be able to carry his products. They will have the excuse, they will have to censor that person and not allow him to make money. And that way they will basically take down anything that has to do with natural health and organic living, and all these things, all these methods that we can employ to counteract the poisoning that's going on in this world. This world is a concentration camp. People don't understand. You've got to filter your water because there's sodium fluoride and things like hexafluorosilicic acid in the water that is a poisoning campaign. I start with that. When I talk to people and I'm trying to wake them up to what the world really is, I don't talk about politics. I don't talk about the new world order. I don't talk about vaccines. I talk about, do you know that there's fluoride in the drinking water? It's added in there, and it's a neurotoxin. And it was used as rat poison in the concentration camps. I love to hit Polish people with that. And, that's a good way to start. So people still got to explain to me why there's fluoride in the water. So until they do that, I'm going to say this will be employed to make sure that we don't have any means of defending ourselves against the poisoning that's going on in this world, to toxify our environment and make it impossible for us to have a healthy mind. Because when you have a healthy body and a healthy mind, you can do things like this, but not otherwise. Not if you're sick and lazy. You won't be able to be any threat to the people really running this world, right? So make no mistake about it, this is going to blacklist unregulated transactions. And why should they be able to do this? Why should anybody be able to do this? They talk about illegal goods. But what is an illegal product? Is cocaine an illegal product? Why? Why? Are we really going to talk about societal harm? Or don't you really think that in 2023 we should have more respect for ourselves than to be in somebody's house thinking about banning them from putting something into their stomach? You're going to tell them they can't take some type of medication just because it doesn't matter if it's going to hurt them. It's their choice. What is this illegal product business? These are not children. We're talking about adults that can make the decisions. I could buy a jar of muriatic acid to pressure wash walls with. That'll take all these chemicals. It will take all the dust and all the debris and even concrete off of bricks, and I can use that. I could pour it in a bucket, and I could use it in my work, and I have to wash a concrete wall, a brick wall. And what's stopping me from drinking that and killing myself instantly? Because that's what will happen if you drink muriatic acid. But this is not really regulated, right? But they're going to regulate all these other things. They're going to regulate food or medicines, because they're going to say, just like the perfect example is Rick Simpson oil, the RSO, that has been proven to have all these anti-cancer properties, all these medicinal properties, but they're going to focus on that and make that illegal. Why? Because clearly it could help you avoid cancer. Clearly. So all this stuff about illegal products, what gives anybody a right to prohibit you from taking something into your body? Do they own you? Are you their slave? You're not. Moving forward, effective safeguards for users, including the possibility to challenge platforms' content moderation decisions. Including the possibility to challenge the platform's content moderation decisions. That means me, or a regular person, can look at a decision, say Twitter or YouTube chose not to ban this person for saying something that went against climate change. Now people can flag this. And they can flag these companies, and they could just flood them. And don't you understand what's going to happen now? It's going to weaponize the loudest voice. It's going to encourage mob rule. Anybody who's unpopular or too popular, and anything they say that is against somebody's feelings or whims, people will be able to bring like individual challenges, and anything like that, a challenge like that, it'll just become a legal problem for these platforms. So clearly these platforms are going to take those challenges or whatever they will be, appeals, and they're going to lean on the side of, well, we're just going to take this down because we don't want the trouble. That's what's going to happen. And people are going to call for censorship of anything they disagree with, anything unpopular. Do they not do this now? People get targeted with bans, will get flagged. and you get 5 or 10 people to flag you in a chat room, or something like Discord, or something like that, and they won't even think about it. They'll just ban you, and you didn't actually do anything wrong. These weaponized attacks on people, it's all the time, right? This happens. Also, it will be a ban on certain type of targeted adverts on online platforms, especially when they target children or when they use special categories of personal data, such as ethnicity, political views, and sexual orientation. So this, I totally agree with it. This is talking about like targeting kids, sending certain ads on TikTok, sending essentially scams to kids. I totally agree with this type of like malicious advertising. It's immoral. So for this to be gone, I totally agree with that. That doesn't mean I support them having this type of power to even do that. But yes, I agree. We need to keep that away from children. So I included that. I'm not, I'm going to go through each one of these individually. I agree with this one. And that just goes to show, it's not so black and white in the real world. I'm sure that this Digital Services Act, in the beginning, there may be no censorship in the beginning. They might show their good side first. They're going to ban the people who are trying to exploit children to buy their products, to take down the illegal content on things like Twitter and TikTok, because there's a lot of straight up gore and extreme violence and even rape and abuse that kids can just find on TikTok and on Twitter, just because there's so much information, and it will get through any kind of filters they have. So now that this will be used to get rid of that, yeah, they will be doing a good thing, but it does not erase all of these violations of basic human fundamental rights of communication, right? Also, there will be obligations for very large platforms, remember, like Google and YouTube, and other very large search engines, to prevent the misuse of their systems by taking risk-based action, and by independent audits of their risk management systems. So when they talk about risk management, they're forcing them to implement these censorship nets before the information is actually put out there. So that's what they mean by risk management. They want the preemptive censorship, that they're going to force YouTube and Google and Facebook to do preemptive censorship. So to take measures to not allow content to go through even before it's made available. And this is the real danger, right? Also, access for researchers to key data of the largest platforms and search engines in order to understand how online risks evolve. So basically, this is just about like government data collection. They want the transparency. That's why they make law like this. Because remember, behind the scenes, it's not like it's just a closed doors meeting room or like a satanic cult meeting of just 100 people that run the world. That's not how this works in the real world, right? There are powerful people and different factions of groups that exchange power, and they work with each other against the people, but they still struggle between each other. So this is an example. This is an example of that. This is the European Union and the Commission struggling against big tech. They want to impose some more of this on them. They both want censorship, but the government wants it even more so, and they're going to force these, Google, YouTube, because trust me, some of these big platforms, they don't want this law. This makes things a lot harder for them, but at the same time, it actually does help them. That's why the big players are going to go along with this, because even though it's a pain in the ass for them to comply with these regulations, it actually kills any kind of competition. And I talked about this last week, that to make something super centralized and super restricted with all these regulations that they have to comply with, this actually supports the monopoly, because the monopoly is going to get the government aid on the back end. They're going to get the government subsidies on the back end and under the table anyway. So, but this is just the access that they want to give their people, their representatives, to get all the private data, This is just a little power struggle between them, right? And finally, oversight structure to address the complexity of the online space. EU countries will have the primary role, supported by a new European Board for Digital Services. For very large platforms, supervision and enforcement by the Commission. So this creates a new board, a new executive group, right? The European Board for Digital Services, and they will be the ones who are deciding, who are chosen by the Commission. So it'll be a new third party, and they will decide what gets censored and what does not. So it's these members of the Commission, they're implanting themselves as the new dictator and decision maker that is going to tell countries and that are going to tell these companies what to do. I want to take it back to the risk assessment I talked about a few minutes ago. They talk a lot about this risk assessment, and I think it's the most important thing to talk about, because this is where most of the censorship is going to happen. This is going to allow things to be taken down before it is even seen, before it is even flagged. So a third category of risks coming from, this is reading from the actual law, which you could find, and I'll link to it. A third category of risk concerns the actual or foreseeable negative effects on democratic processes, civic discourse, and electoral processes, as well as public security. So that's actually talking about politics. Civic discourse is what? Talking about philosophy, talking about rights. They threw in electoral processes because what they're going to say that you're not going to be able to criticize a political candidate because they're going to say that that's factually wrong when it's actually factually correct. You see, they took Jordan Peterson's license away, and they're going to take his license away. Why? Because he criticized the prime minister. And that's why it happened with Justin Trudeau in Canada. Because Canada is a lot like Europe, and that's what you get for being someone who never really broke from the crown. The only way you break from the crown, from the Commonwealth, is by cutting the head off, or at least forcing them to back off. And that's what they did here in the United States. And that's why I'm here, and all the other Polish people doing construction with me, that's why they're all here. And I think they forget. They forget that you got to cut the head off to the king if you want to get from under his rule. So they're talking about foreseeable effects. So even if this can have an effect, so actual or foreseeable. So do you see how much power this gives them? Right? It's forcing them to do risk assessment, to say, okay, this information that looks like it's going to criticize a certain political party or certain global narrative like climate change, they can censorship preemptively. They can censor that preemptively because it is going to be flagged by the risk management systems. And then you don't get an appeal, you don't get anything. It just doesn't get through the net. It doesn't even get through to the platform. That's what's going to happen. A fourth category of risk stems from similar concerns relating to the design, functioning, or use, including through manipulation of very large online platforms and of very large online search engines, with an actual or foreseeable negative effect on the protection of public health, minors, and serious negative consequences to a person's physical and mental well-being, or on gender-based violence. Such risks may also stem from coordinated disinformation campaigns related to public health, or from online interface design that may stimulate behavioral addictions of recipients of the service. I'm going to approach it from the end. That sentence they threw in at the end, when they're talking about an interface design that may stimulate behavioral addictions, they're talking about TikTok, because that's the way it is. When you're just scrolling, you're creating a behavioral addiction. You're basically getting put into crackhead mode. And I know this, I've seen a lot of crackheads, okay? This is what it is. People are just scrolling, these kids are just scrolling, yes. This is an inherently predatory interface design. I agree with this, so I'll give them that. When they're talking about coordinated disinformation campaigns related to public health, they could claim that what I just told you about fluoride is a coordinated disinformation campaign, when really what it is me giving you factual information. Hey, you're drinking poison, stop drinking poison. because people aren't going to read this law, and because it gets passed, and because there's no big deal made about it, this is the kind of stuff that gets slid under the door, under the carpet, and it's there, and they could pull it out and they could say, ha, this is a disinformation campaign. So when someone like James Corbett on his show is going to say, hey, there's a new health crisis, something like that, they could shut his YouTube channel down, they could shut his website down, they could even shut his internet access down, because they're going to say that he was engaging in a coordinated disinformation campaign relating to public health, when he was actually just trying to help the public health, right? When they talk about public health or gender-based violence, you know what they're going to do with the gender-based violence stuff. You know that these LGBT narratives are going to start to get closer and closer to what? Pedophilia, and that's going to happen. Now, I have always defended LGBT people, and I will continue to, because I'm all about what? Freedom of expression. That includes sexual expression. So all these people could do what they want. Kids could do whatever they want with each other. I'll always hold that view. But let's not play. We know what's going on here. Government is going to use these new age, Alfred Kinsey derived sexual perversion, new age narratives, and satanic ideologies to corrupt the children, and to take the LGBT umbrella of that ideology closer and closer to pedophilia. And it's going to force a big public uproar, but there will be nowhere for the information to come out, because what? A law got passed in the European Union that is not going to allow that information to be disseminated. So what's going to happen? The only outlet for that type of thing will probably be some type of racial group. And it'll be some type of racist, white power type of cult group. And then it will be that a mythical racial war and civil war that they keep scaring the people with. And that is going to be the only outlet for the information. And it's just going to be authoritarian bullshit on the other wing, on the right wing. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen if you don't stand up for freedom of expression, because the expression is only going to be allowed to flourish at the extremes and be separated from the silent majority, which is really the most important demographic to have. Okay? When the majority stops being silent, that's when they actually count. So let me give you an example of a risk assessment. They talk about these, I just talked about these risk assessments that they're going to force them to do. So this is how it's going to go with this risk assessment. So they have to do it each year or biannually, every 6 months. So a company like, say, Wikipedia or YouTube is going to have to report, and they're going to say, well, we've detected a risk. For some people, it looks like they're going to say that putting fluoride in the water is a dangerous idea. And then this commission, this European regulatory agency, is going to say, oh, gee, what are you going to do about that? And then they're going to look at them, and then YouTube's going to say, well, I guess we'll ban it. And then the European Commission is going to look at them and say, well, I think that's a good idea. I think that will be a good thing to do. And that will be the end of your risk assessment. It's just going to be corporate bullshitting to avoid any type of liability or avoid taking a stand, because corporations don't take stands. People take stands. People expressing themselves take a stand for something that's correct. I want to mention a few things that are going to be super tyrannical about this. One thing is they're going to implement a notice and action mechanism, which is what? It's a practice where this commission will give these websites or these platforms a notice that, hey, you guys are giving somebody a platform that is doing something illegal or unsafe. And then when they get this notice, they have a limited time frame. They have a certain time period that they have to resolve that issue within that time frame. So they either have to take the information down, and that will be the end of their problems, or they have to prove, right? The burden of proof will be on the platform to prove, hey, no, this actually is not any violation of this whole gigantic act. So do you think they're going to take the time to do that? No. This will encourage a de facto takedowns on a systematic basis. It's going to be systematic like this. what they're gonna get the notice, and it's just gonna be like a cashier. They're gonna scan it and they're gonna throw it away. They're gonna put it in the bag and say thank you very much. That's what this is gonna do. This notice and action mechanism, because now these platforms now get the burden on them, the burden of proof, and now they have to take the time and the effort to dispute it, which means they incur a liability risk. So if they're wrong, then they could get penalized and they could get fined. You think YouTube doesn't have enough on their mind to worry about defending your free speech for you to something like this commission? It's a liability risk, and it's the lawyer fees, because they have to pay these people to do this, right? People aren't just doing volunteer work for Facebook. People are getting paid. So you got to pay somebody to go through all these notices. So you think about how your boss is with you working there in your 8 hours or my 10 hours. So think about how you're worked there, how you're treated there. You think he wants to pay you extra to defend somebody's free speech because it may be being infringed on? Or you think he wants you to get rid of the damn notice and do something else and do 7 more hours of bullshit work? You tell me. So next point, hosting, providers, and cloud services. This includes hosting, providers, and cloud services, and I have to just go back to this because this is unprecedented. This is crazy. These are people that have nothing to do with the information. This would allow, if my website was based and hosted in the European Union, which actually with Green Geeks there are servers in Europe, so this may actually affect people that are worldwide but are headquartered in the European Union, or they're headquartered somewhere else but they're disseminating the information in the European Union. So this will make platforms like GoDaddy, like Weebly, like Squarespace, it will make them responsible for taking down your free speech. It was supposed to be your free speech on your personal website, your personal data, and even cloud services. So even when your data is not even being sent anywhere, it's not even about servers or anything like that, or bandwidth. It's just storing it for yourself, for your different devices. They could shut down your communication. First of all, they have the access to it. By default, they would have to have the access to it. So they already got you there. They can already monitor everything you do. And they could take it down if they don't agree with it. So if you don't have local backups or hard drives, you guys in Europe better start buying hard drives and putting stuff on there, because you're going to have the rug pulled out from under you one day. No doubt about it. And then another point is basically this is going to be money weaponized censorship. And that's the new kind of censorship. It's not the government that's going to tell you to take it down. It's going to be whatever company, because that's what we have. We don't have any free market. We have crony capitalism. We have corporatism. So they're going to have these corporations take your stuff down, or what? Because what are you going to do? Are you going to host your website yourself? Are you going to make your own channel? Do you have your own radio station? No, you have to be on YouTube. You have to be on social media. Otherwise, nobody's going to find you. So they're going to take down your channel, and the corporations are going to do it. They're not going to do it because they care about censoring you. They're just going to do it because they want to make their money. They got a way of life to uphold. They got a mortgage to pay off, right? The people working there. They got a promotion they're trying to get. They're trying to send their kids to Disney World. What the fuck do you think this world's all about? They will do anything not to jeopardize their profits. And this creates a decentralized enforcement infrastructure. It's decentralized, which means what? Which means it's not just coming from one place, which means essentially you got no chance to break that censorship, and that'll be through money. So that'll be enough of talking about this law specifically. I thought I did a pretty good job of going through that calmly and succinctly. So taking it back to what I said in the beginning, right? I talked about in the beginning about freedom of speech against freedom of expression, and how expression is the important one. Well, look, this Digital Service Act, this law, will result in more speech. This actually increases freedom of speech. Freedom of speech will actually increase in the European Union because what? The users will be able to use their freedom of speech to flag everything, to get that censored. Everybody will have more freedom of speech to say, hey, this is publicly unsafe. or this is illegal, or this person is a racist, or this person is a bigot, and he's saying things that are scientifically unfounded. He's saying that chemtrails are real. This guy's saying that there had to be bombs in the World Trade Center because they collapsed in 6 seconds at free fall speeds, completely ignoring the material that was in the towers. Where are the beams? They'll have a lot of freedom of speech to make sure that you don't have that freedom of speech. So there's that. Then the businesses will use the freedom of speech to clarify their positions, because of course they have to clarify. We made the decision to allow this person to stay on our platform because he did this, or we had to take them down because this and this, and then they'll pay somebody to take 2 hours out of their 8-hour bullshit job to write a 5-page justification of how them taking down my YouTube channel helped society. And that's more freedom of speech. There's more speech in the world now, because everybody will speak out about that. Everybody will write their article, and everybody will peer review everybody's bullshit speech. And then content creators on YouTube, the guys that are trying to get 50 million subscribers, and they're trying to do celebrity boxing, they're trying to get a face-to-face with Logan Paul, they're going to use their speech to give their disclaimers and explain their positions and all this. And then the CEOs and business executives are going to use their speech to clearly define and delineate company policy from what's been claimed about them. So much freedom of speech. The world will just be a freedom of speech place thanks to this Digital Services Act in the European Union. Well, I'm expecting the European Union to become a beacon for freedom of speech with this in effect, right? And you know what? All of it will be control. All of it will result in more control, because all of that speech will be based in fear. And that's the problem. We got all of our speech, most of our speech, just even people on a daily basis, most of the things they speak are based in fear. And expression is based in love. So what kind of love am I talking about? Am I talking about flowers? Am I talking about smiling at somebody, walking past them down the street and making their day? Am I talking about even home makeover, building a house for them? You know, making someone's dream come true by fixing their house, building them the dream house. No, that's not love. True love for your fellow man is just leaving them the hell alone. It's the same thing as love for animals and love for nature. Just leave them the hell alone to express themselves. With animals, the best thing you could do for an animal is give them your absence. That's the best gift you can give an animal. And humans are more than animals, sure, but we are animals too. We are fundamentally animals, so that requirement has to be met. They gotta leave us the hell alone with this stuff. Or you're gonna bring the animal out. That's what it's all about. You know, leaving everyone alone and expressing yourself, that's what it's all about. And trying to moderate or curate somebody else's intake of information, you could do that, but only when you're welcomed and asked to. Okay, if somebody asks me to, I will show them their books. I'm like, okay, you need to read this, you need to do this, you need to do this. If they ask me to, I do that. If you want to go on my channel, I'll tell you everything. And I do. I talk about everything I know that I know to be true. But you know what? No one ever asked to have their political views or their scientific researchers moderated for them and have their food chewed and spit back out to them because they can't find it for themselves. People will even claim that, yes, that's what they want. People will claim, yes, I want that censorship to happen for me. Or not censorship, I want somebody to moderate my information for me before I get it. But the truth is, no one ever asked for that. This has been pushed on the people. So let's not act like this is normal from the European Union, because it's not normal. Expression in art is just a different picture, a different reflection of the same beam of light that free will and individual rights come from. These are just basic rights. This is just basic survival. And expression in art is just a different form of that light, but people don't see it. They don't engage in that, right? It's all about a chance for each person to be honest to the world about who and what they are, right? That's what you're supposed to have with access to the internet and all this technology. That's the only way it even makes sense to use it. And with this act, these regulations, right? These regulations on these corporations and platforms, it's just another huge nail in the coffin. It's a nail in the coffin, and in the coffin is the human spirit buried alive. And then they just keep nailing and nailing and nailing into the coffin, and it's at a point where I don't think the people are gonna, like, why? How are they gonna free themselves? We keep fighting because we don't know how the landscape will change, right? We may have a big natural cataclysm, and the power grid might shut down, and this information will be important then, or it'll be very desirable then. We may have another pandemic, in which case people will be at home, and hey, maybe they'll discover This Week in Tyranny episode 39. So that's why we do this. I don't just yell at the wall for nothing. I'm doing this for a reason. There's a reason for this expression. It's not just what I want to do, how I want to express myself. So let me finish that up with some solutions, right? Sometimes I talk about solutions, sometimes I don't. The solutions are kind of always the same every episode, so I don't talk about them every episode. But the problem with solutions is, first of all, the problem is with even talking about solutions that almost everyone who will see a video like mine, like this one, they're not going to take any action based on the information I presented here. Because the inspiration from the information is going to fade like in the next 2 minutes or 10 minutes, or for you it might fade in 30 minutes. But chances are you're going to click off the video, you're going to say, damn, good job, that's a good video. You might like it. I'll appreciate it if you reach out to me and say, hey, good job, man. I'll feel good about that. But chances are even those people, a couple of my close people, I'm not talking about my close people who are already sacrificing their life, doing what they can, or at least trying, because I know everybody has their own family, their life and their struggles. You guys who are trying, I love you guys. I'm not talking to you guys, but most people see this and they're not going to take any action based on it, right? So what's the point of talking about solutions? I just had to get that off my chest first. But real talk, what are the real solutions? Well, it's definitely not a petition. It's definitely not flooding them with complaints, although that might be a start. That might be a good start. Maybe if they get enough phone calls, if they get enough phone calls, they will have to change this act. But we don't have enough people listening to even do that, right? So that's why petitioning and calling up your congressman or your parliamentary representative will not do anything, right? Now, here are some real solutions that will do something. Flooding all lines of communication available, flooding them with the opposition to censorship. This is a war. So before this gets shut down, and even when this act gets put into effect, if this got put into effect in the United States, I'll still circumvent it. I can speak the truth in such a way where you can't censor me. This can be done. This has been done in times where it needed to be done. But you got to be real good at expressing yourself to be able to do that. That's the problem. You won't be able to say a certain word or a certain phrase because the algorithms will have that and they'll cut that off. So it'll just keep limiting the amount of people who can speak freely and express themselves freely. So we gotta flood the world with that free expression, right? That's one. That's what I do. Another thing is influencing people. We really gotta influence people in real life, online, in groups, in chats, the people in your family. Hey, this is all about influence. We gotta keep expanding. We gotta keep spreading the word. We can't be getting boxed in. We can't be just influencing each other or in our little communities and constantly getting closer and closer to this center, smaller and smaller. Like, you meet somebody, you think you guys are on the same page, then you realize he likes another political candidate, or this guy, or he thinks the earth is flat, well, he thinks the earth is round. He thinks the Kennedy assassination was done by the Secret Service, or this guy thinks that 9/11 was actually no planes, and this person thinks that, well, there were planes, but there were explosions in the towers too, and this guy thinks it was scalar energy weapons. This guy thinks it was really guys from Saudi Arabia who got training here. And then they get smaller and smaller and smaller, and the influence gets smaller and smaller because you're getting yourself boxed in as this guy who talks about a lot of crazy stuff. Don't get boxed in. You got to influence people. I can influence people. I could talk to people in a way that doesn't sound like this, right? Because who's gonna really listen to me? Who's like, who doesn't know me? This is for the people that know me. And influencing women. Who's out here influencing women? This is what we gotta do, because women influence men. So this can't be no little boys club. This is not no fraternity like Freemasonry or Bohemian Grove or something like that. Guys, we're not gonna get it done like this. You gotta influence women, and you gotta know how to talk to them. Because if you just keep talking about the poison that's in the water and stuff like this, well, do women really care about that first and foremost? What women care about first and foremost is securing a stable home and raising children, and basically having stability and security in daily life. They care about a nurturing environment for children. If they're not about children, they probably like something else. They probably have the same classically feminine qualities, but just in a different area. So you gotta know how to express yourself as a man to different types of people. And if we don't influence women, well, the system is influencing women every day, and they're getting them through the money, through the fashion, through the celebrities. They're getting them through a lot of material stuff. Okay, this is what it is. And also they're getting the women through altruism, so helping these people, helping the animals, save the whales, save the snails, save the environment. Say the right wingers are hurting the environment, so we got to censor them. Okay, you got to know how to influence women, and it's probably not like this. This might influence a couple women. Don't think it'll be very many, right? It's a different type of conversation style. That doesn't mean you turn into a bullshitter and start sweet talking. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being real, expressing yourself, but remember, you're not just preaching at a wall. You're not just talking to a camera. You're talking to a human being. You got to understand human beings. You got to understand what they care about, and then you do influence them. Not because you want to impose some type of worldview on them. You want to influence them because you want them to do the best for themselves. And they can't be the best version of themselves if they're drinking poison. And lastly, the solution is representing freedom and individuality in a way that uplifts the concepts. So I'm talking about representing them well. I'm talking about by living a certain way, being an example. So I have the series called The Warrior Path. That's my take on it. How you represent these ideas. You can't just talk about the truth. You got to represent the truth. That means you got to try real hard not to look like shit, not to eat like shit, not to act, not to be constantly in chaos. You got to be trustworthy. You got to live ethically. Not everybody, okay? But if you really want to help, that's the real solution. It's kind of like a general life decision you got to make. But I'll tell you, this life decision has been 100% worth it. So, thank you very much for joining me on episode 39 of This Week in Tyranny. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next week on This Week in Tyranny.